Hey everybody, Mommy Hen back at you again with a brand new video. Today I'm going to be preparing another autumn time dessert. And that will be pumpkin raisin cinnamon rolls. That's right, pumpkin raisin cinnamon rolls. Is perfect for the autumn time of the year, and no better time to make them than today. So let's get started. I've got a warm cup of half a cup of buttermilk. I'm going to add that to my mixer. You can use whatever milk product you like. I just happen to only have buttermilk, so buttermilk it is. To that, I'm going to add 1/3 of a cup of sugar. So let me grab my sugar. So 1/3 of a cup of sugar. All right, so there's that. We're kind of going to come back to sugar later on in the process. So anyway, next, I want to add a packet of yeast, quick rise yeast. Now you can use active dry. It'll just you'll have to let it bloom, but with quick rise, no, it's not necessary to bloom your yeast. All right, 1 packet of yeast. And mix. With the power on, of course. The purpose for adding the sugar with the yeast is to activate the yeast. Sugar is used as an activator for your yeast. All right, and because it's quick rise, we don't need to let it bloom. So, the next step in the process will be adding my butter. And I'm reading from my notes here. I've got to add 1/3 of a cup or 5 tablespoons of butter. Softened butter. And you can melt the butter, doesn't matter. I'm just choosing to do it this way. Okay. The next ingredient to add will be my pumpkin. And I'm just going to add 1/2 a cup of cold pumpkin puree. Not pumpkin pie filling, the pumpkin puree. There is a big difference. Okay. So a half a cup of pumpkin puree. And mix. Smells like pumpkin already. Now, I want to add 2 cups of flour, and maybe more. We'll just have to wait and see. But 2 cups of flour, one of which will be all-purpose, and the other will be bread flour, just because breads bake better with bread flour. It gives it more volume. It gives it more sturdiness, if you will. And it gives it a bit of a chew. Okay, so I like to mix up my flour in lieu of sifting, just because I get a more accurate measurement, because it's incorporating some air. Okay, so a half a cup of bread flour, and then a half a cup of all-purpose flour. Okay. Then to that, I'm going to add a bit more of leavening. Now, I don't always bake with my own personal recipe. Sometimes I go online and I find a recipe that I like, and I just embellish on it. Y'all know me, the embellisher of all embellishers, okay? So, now that I have my flour incorporated, I'm going to add a bit more leavening. And I found this recipe online, and I can't say as though I understand why there's more leavening added, especially since there was yeast added, but I'm going to follow the recipe. So a 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder and baking soda. So if these don't turn out right, don't blame it on me. Blame it on the recipe. Okay. Blame it on the recipe. And then I'm going to add a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Okay. All right, now to add the spices. And I'm going to add a teaspoon of this wonderful brown butter seasoning. Okay. And then I'm going to add, let me grab my cinnamon. I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. Let's see here. Okay. I'm going to add a half a cup, or not a half a cup, a half a teaspoon of cinnamon. Now we'll have to double back and bring the cinnamon in later for the filling. So half a teaspoon of cinnamon, and then a half a teaspoon, and this is the embellishing part with these spices, because the recipe really doesn't call for spices in the dough mixture, but I'm just adding them. Okay, a half a teaspoon of pumpkin pie spice, okay? All right, there is that. And then we're going to mix. Oh, I forgot the egg. 1 large egg, of course. And just mix it until you get somewhat of a sticky batter. We'll add more flour if we need to. The recipe is kind of contradictory because in the first part it calls for 3 to 4 cups of flour, and then later on down it calls for 2 cups. That's why I said we'll add more sugar or more flour if we need to. You're going to mix it till it pulls away from the bowl. And you can also touch it just to see what the consistency is, whether you need to add more flour. All right, I'm going to stop it momentarily to check the consistency. Yeah, it needs more flour. It's a little bit too sticky. So I'm just going to grab some more bread flour. I think I'm going to start off with a cup. I was going to say I'd start off with half a cup, but feeling that the consistency is too sticky, I think a cup will do it. So 1 additional cup of bread flour. See what this does for the dough. I don't know why it said 3 to 4 cups, and then further down on the recipe it said 2 cups. So I'm just winging it. If it don't turn out right, y'all don't blame me. Blame the recipe and the person that wrote it. I think 3 cups is the magic number. Pulling away from the bowl. So that's a good sign. Okay, let's check it. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. 3 is the magic number, y'all. All right. So, gonna get the rest of this dough off the hook, and it is time for the dough to proof. I'm gonna give it an hour to proof. So you want to put a little oil in your mixing bowl. And then just toss that dough around in the oil so it doesn't stick to the bowl. You're going to let this proof for 1 hour. So put it in a warm place. Or you can turn your oven light on and sit it in the oven and it'll be just fine. And that's what it looks like. All right, when I come back at you, the dough will have proofed and it will be ready to be rolled out, at which point I will add the raisins and the sugar and the cinnamon for the filling, okay? Hang tight. Hey everybody, I am back. And I've allowed my dough, my pumpkin cinnamon roll dough, to proof an hour and a half. So I'm just going to spread it out here on this board, this cutting board, and knead it. Hold the line. And I've set up a makeshift platform so you guys can see what I'm doing. But here is the dough. Let me see if I can turn it around more. Okay, so here is the dough. I hope you can see it. And I'm just gonna spread some flour over the top. And you really don't necessarily need a rolling pin because it's so soft. The dough is so soft and pliable, you really don't need it. But for the sake of presentation, I'm gonna go ahead and roll the dough out to about, maybe a 1/3 of an inch to 1/2 an inch, and I want to make a rectangle. All right, so we got it pretty much in a rectangle. So it is approximately, little less than 1/2 an inch thick. Now, the next thing I want to do is spread some butter. So about 5 tablespoons of softened butter. And just want to, should have really put some heat to it. Let me add some heat to it so it spreads on a little bit easier. So I'm going to soften this butter up a little bit so it's easier to spread. So what you want to do is take your butter and spread it over top of your dough. About 1/3 of a cup or 5 tablespoons. Actually, if you melt it, you won't quite need 1/3 of a cup. But now, the next thing I want to do is to spread my cinnamon and sugar. So I've got about 1/2 a cup of brown sugar to a tablespoon of cinnamon and a teaspoon of pumpkin pie spice. And I'm just gonna spread that over. I'm gonna use it all up. This is gonna be so yummy, y'all. Spread it on very, very thick. Okay? Because you want all that cinnamon goodness to come through. And then I'm going to use some of these raisins. I'm actually going to use all these raisins because there's only about half a cup left. So I'm just going to spread these raisins out. Now, you don't have to use raisins. I know a lot of folks don't like raisins, but I do. And since it's my show, okay, it's my show. Okay. So I love raisins, but they're totally optional. If you want them, fine. If you don't, that's fine too. All right. Lots and lots of raisins. Okay, I didn't quite use, I used maybe about a third of a cup of raisins. And then, because y'all know I like to embellish, I've got some orange zest of a couple of oranges, and I'm just gonna sprinkle that on top of the raisins and the sugar, just because orange and pumpkin work well together. So just sprinkle some zest. Trust me on this, okay? I know it sounds weird, but trust me on this. I've been baking a very, very long time. And though I don't know it all, I'll never claim to know it all. I do know a lot. Okay, now that that's done, I'm going to roll the dough up. If you need to flour your fingers so the dough doesn't stick to your hands, then go ahead and do that. All right? Folding the corners in as you go. These are gonna be so yummy, y'all. So, so yummy. Some more flour. Fold the corners in and roll the dough. And bring the ends in, okay? Now, for the sake of trying to keep it all together, I'm going to remove this makeshift platform. Y'all gonna have to trust me on this, but it's not very sturdy, and I really just rather not deal with it. So I've got about 14-inch log. Okay, I've got about a 14-inch log, and I'm going to try to eyeball it, and going to try to eyeball it and get cut it in half, and then cut it in half again, and try to get some even cinnamon buns. I've got a 9-inch square pan here that I've lined with parchment paper, and I'm just going to lay my dough in there. So okay, gonna eyeball it. I could measure it, but I'm not doing all that. Okay, and then I'm going to cut it in half again. And then I'm going to cut the other side in half again. So I will get a total of 8 buns out of this. Okay, now I'm just going to line my pan with the rolls. It doesn't have to be perfect. I wish I could have gotten 9, and I really could have had I measured the dough. But it's not a perfect, they don't have to be perfect, just good. They don't have to be perfectly shaped because they're going to all bake together. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Pumpkin raisin cinnamon buns. Cinnamon rolls, rather. So I'm going to go off and proof these an additional hour. The first proof was an hour and a half. And the second proof, this one, will be an hour, and then we'll bake them off. And they will bake for 17 to 25 minutes at a temperature of 375. Okay. All right. And there you have it. Hang in there. Okay, everybody, I am back with the finished pumpkin raisin cinnamon rolls. And I just pulled them out of the oven. I'm gonna go ahead and baste the tops of them with this blood orange syrup. See that? Blood orange syrup. And then once that's done, I'll go ahead and put the icing and the pecans, just to give it a nice orange flavor, an extra element of orange flavor, just because pumpkin and orange works well together. So there is that. You don't have to do a whole lot of syrup, and it's completely optional. You don't have to do it. It's just my way of embellishing again. And then I've got some leftover caramel icing that I used on my pumpkin raisin cookies video a day or two ago. So if you want that recipe for the caramel icing, go back and watch the preparation of the pumpkin raisin cookies. And it's all about the fall time of the year where, you know, the seasons change and the taste and the texture of things have changed. And so pumpkin is one of those seasonal items that you typically do in the fall of the year. So I felt it no better time than the present to go ahead and bake some pumpkin items up. And so I've got just enough icing left over, so I don't have to make any more. And this congeals really, really fast, so you want to work pretty quickly with it. All right, and then I'm just going to go and spread that on. Spread that evenly over all the cinnamon rolls. Doesn't have to be perfect. Okay. And then I'll top them off with some roasted pecans. All right. And those are just lovely. Get all that extra icing. I don't want any of it to go to waste. So anyway, all right. And then I will top the cinnamon rolls off with a bit of roasted pecans. These are gonna be so yummy, y'all. You don't need a whole lot of pecans unless you just choose to. And this is totally optional. It's just me exercising my right to embellish. Get those evenly spread out over the cinnamon buns. Cinnamon rolls, I should say. I'm going to use up all of those wonderful pecans. Every last one of them. Just kind of press them in to the buns. And I'm going to let this cool off. And then I'm going to plate a couple of these up and taste test them for you. So hang in there. Okay, y'all, I am back with the pumpkin raisin pecan cinnamon rolls. You see that? Doesn't that look wonderful? Now, even though they're warm, I'm going to taste test them. So I'm going to take this one. Look at the inside of that brown sugar. Isn't that wonderful? So good, y'all. They're moist, flavorful, and that orange syrup that I put on them before I put the icing on just balances everything out and gives it that orangey essence. Just wonderful. Look at the texture. Isn't that wonderful? So good. I've done it again, y'all. And not ashamed to say it. How about that? So I encourage you to give this recipe a try. If you do, please leave me a comment if you so desire to share how they worked out for you. Again, cinnamon raisin. Well, there's cinnamon in there. But pumpkin raisin, pecan, sweet rolls. You see that? And if you like this video, please help me out by sharing, and subscribing. I would so greatly appreciate it. With that said, bye-bye.